Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1 GV, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations, to talk about the second set of radios that I had as a ham radio operator back in the 1960s in Rochester, Minnesota, hailing under the call sign WN0 Ocean, pardon me, it was WA0 Ocean Kilo Victor. Back then the phonetics more likely would be Oscar King Victor. But in any case, it was my first true SSB radio. Back then, operating voice was a novelty to me because I had just obtained my general class license, and the old Viking Adventurer and Night Kit VFO and Hallicrafter's SX130 radio receiver no longer satisfied my desires, and my dad was happy to indulge me a lot, maybe too much, in my ham radio pursuits as a teenager in Minnesota in the 1960s. Besides swimming on the swim team, ham radio was just about my whole life. I had a few dates, but you know how all that stuff goes. I'm not going to get into that stuff. I'm going to talk about this radio because it's hard to find very much information about the radio. They say there's a review in the September 1966 issue of QST magazine. Maybe it's still there. The National 200 Transceiver by National Radio Company. It was a handsome looking radio. It was the first radio I had with a calibrator in it, so I really knew pretty close to the frequency that I was on. But it did have one quirk, and operators began to inform me about this. It had a chirp on CW. A chirp. Do you even know what a chirp is? Well, it's like where you go, instead of da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da, it might go da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da, or if you switch sidebands, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Geez, it's hard to coordinate to do that. But a chirp, the only places now where you hear signals with chirps coming are places like Cuba, where they have old vintage United States radio equipment still in use. Maybe like the National 200. But I found it essentially impossible to get a decent photograph of the doggone thing on the internet, so I decided to stick my face up here for you instead. But if any of you had one of these radios, or maybe still have one, I'm going to leave comments open, and you can tell me what made you happy about it, what made you unhappy about it, or whether it moved you at all. I moved on eventually to bigger and better things. The Drake R4A and T4X, which really caught my spirit and kept me captive all through my attempts to become an Olympic swimmer, which failed miserably and by miles and miles. But I was a success on the ham radio, at least. I don't know, I don't get on the air much anymore, though. Stan Gibilisco, W1 GV, signing off for now, saying 73, which means best regards in ham radio jargon. And in my favorite language, da-da-da-da-da-da.